Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Cole Anderson, and on today's video we will be talking about Percy Grainger's Ramble on the Last Love Duet in Richard Strauss's opera The Rose Bearer. Today's video is a birthday present from my mother, Deborah Anderson, who just celebrated a birthday this week. This piece is one of her favorite pieces, and I think also her favorite from among Grainger's pieces. So happy birthday, Mom. I hope you enjoyed your celebration. This non-material musical gift is for you. Well, interestingly enough, Percy Grainger actually dedicated this piece to the memory of his own mother, Rose Grainger. And Grainger had a rather complicated relationship with his mother. She was rather tyrannical in ordering his personal life and career well into his adult years. Although it's worth noting that Grainger himself seemed to have had no problems with this. In fact, he seems to have appreciated that his mother took care of so many details relating to his career, but his friends and romantic interests almost universally felt that Rose had rather an unpleasant level of control over Percy. I won't go into the whole unhappy story, but Rose unfortunately also suffered some serious mental health issues, which regrettably led to her taking her own life in 1922. Well, this tragedy made Grainger quite distraught, and it took him quite some time to recover his poise and zest for compositional work again. But after a few years, he completed this work, which apparently this piece had been kind of kicking around in his mind for some years before as well. But he completed it in around 1926, 1927 in honor of Rose's memory. And it's surely the most elaborate and marvelously sumptuous of all his arrangements of other composers' works. Grainger calls this fantasy a ramble. It's a unique term that he liked to use for pieces like this. And it's a name that fits in beautifully with his own active, outdoorsy kind of nature. And fittingly, this is not a strict literal transcription of the closing duet from Der Rosenkavalier. Instead, it is truly a ramble, more of a kind of an impression or a reflection on the material, and very improvisatory in nature. Several times Grainger allows the music to get pulled off course as he follows his musical instincts down some very surprising rabbit holes. The identity of this music as a duet will also not be terribly obvious to those of you who do not know the original duet from the ending of Der Rosenkavalier. Grainger doesn't really make any attempt to highlight that quality of the music, instead reimagining it in purely pianistic terms. It's a very emotional scene in the original. In this finale, the young Count Octavian and Sophie von Vaninal avow their love for each other, while in the middle section, the Marschallin tenderly bids her former lover Octavian goodbye, releasing him to marry Sophie. This duet actually comes right after the famous trio that features Octavian, Sophie, and the Marschallin, which is one of the sublime moments in opera. And this whole sequence, the trio followed by the duet, is just magnificent. It's replete in a very complicated mix of emotions. Of course, there's this kind of sublime happiness that the two young lovers are feeling, but it's balanced also against this kind of regret and nostalgia on the part of Octavian and the Marschallin, and it really forms one of the great emotional operatic finales. This opera really was the last hurrah of late 19th century romanticism. It's all unabashedly romantic, and Grainger maintains this mood in his own transcription in a marvelous fashion. As is common in all Grainger's piano music, this piece is full of complicated pedal effects. In fact, Grainger rather outdoes himself here with places that call for every possible combination of all three pedals. In particular, at the transition from the A to the B section, Grainger gets a really remarkable effect. At this point, when the pedal is removed, while the notes of the F major triad are held, he gets a kind of a ghost harmonic, a very faint treble G that sounds through the silence. That is then repeated full voice to start the next melody. It's a really magical effect. So I hope you do enjoy the performance. Also, I wanted to give a little plug. I taped an interview on the Education Monsters podcast a few months back, and it just aired, so I put the link to that in the description if you're interested in hearing. The woman who runs the podcast, she's called Aurélie. She's really interested in all facets of education and also language learning in particular. She's a native speaker in both French and English, and her podcasts cover a wide range of topics in both languages. So any of my viewers who are trying to improve their English or French will find her podcast to be an invaluable resource for accessible material to listen to in both languages. We had a very interesting conversation, which naturally centered mainly on the impact that the pandemic has had on musicians, but we also talked about other things as well. So go take a listen to that if it sounds like it would interest you. Also, on a more troubling note, I noticed recently that ads have been appearing at the beginning of my videos. And this is unfortunate. I never actually intended to run advertising on this channel, but unfortunately there isn't anything I can do about it. It would seem that YouTube changed their terms of service and that they now require creators to agree that they can randomly run ads even on channels that are not monetized, which means also basically that YouTube makes money off of my content and I don't get anything for it. It's a bit of an ethically ambiguous situation, but it's not clear what kind of steps can be taken to get them to change this back to the way it was before. I guess unless YouTube creators all gather together in a union or something like that, which doesn't seem likely to happen anytime soon. Thanks for watching anyway though, and I hope to see you next time.